Welcome to Revenge with Arya. I got the promotion I had been working toward for 6 years. Senior financial analyst at one of the top firms in the city. 6 years of early mornings, skipped vacations, performance reviews where I outscored everyone on the floor. 6 years of proving myself in a room where I was always the youngest, always the one who had to work twice as hard to be taken half as seriously. When my manager called me into her office and slid that offer letter across the desk, I sat very still for a moment because I didn't want to cry in front of her. I held it together until I got to the parking garage. Then I sat in my car and let myself feel it. I called my mother first. She said, "Oh, that's nice, honey." Then she asked if I'd heard that my brother had just signed with a new business partner. I told myself it didn't matter. I was used to it. I had been used to it my entire life. My name is Clara Bennett. I'm 31 years old, and I want to tell you what happened when I decided, for once, to expect my family to show up for me. And what happened when they didn't, and what I did about it. I booked a private dining room at Meridian, the kind of restaurant where the tablecloths are pressed and the candles come in glass hurricanes, and they bring bread with actual salted butter. I made a reservation for 14 people. I sent a group text with all the details 3 weeks in advance. Saturday evening, 7 o'clock. Dress nicely. Dinner is on me. My parents, my brother, my sister, my aunts, a couple of cousins. Everyone confirmed. My mother even texted back a string of heart emojis. I spent that Saturday afternoon getting ready slowly, the way you do when you want to remember the feeling. I wore the black dress I'd been saving. I took a cab instead of driving, so I could arrive calm. When I walked into Meridian at 6:45, the hostess led me to the private room I'd reserved, and I stood in the doorway looking at the long table set for 14 and felt something rise in my chest that I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. Pride. Real, uncomplicated pride. I sat down. I ordered sparkling water. I watched the clock. 7 o'clock came. Then 7:15. I texted the group. Running late? Everyone okay? No response. 7:30. I flagged down our server and apologized, told her we might be starting a little late. She was kind about it. 8 o'clock. The bread basket they'd brought had gone cold. My sparkling water was flat. I had refreshed the group chat so many times that the little notification bubble refused to form because there was simply nothing new. I don't know exactly what made me open Instagram. Maybe I already knew. Maybe some part of me had known since my mother said, "Oh, that's nice, honey," and moved on to my brother in the same breath. My sister had posted a reel. My brother in the center of a crowded restaurant, not Meridian, somewhere loud and bright with neon signs and a DJ in the corner. My mother on his left, laughing. My father on his right, clapping him on the back. My aunts, my cousins. The same 14 people I had been sitting waiting for, all of them packed around a long table covered in balloons and a banner that read, "Congratulations on the new venture." My sister's caption said, "Supporting our guy as he chases his dream." Family always shows up. Family always shows up. I set my phone face down on the pressed white tablecloth. I looked at the empty chairs. I looked at the candles burning quietly in their glass holders. I thought about the reservation I had made 3 weeks ago, and the confirmation texts, and the black dress, and the cab. I sat very still for a long moment. Then I called the server over and asked for the check for the bread and the sparkling water, and I tipped her generously, and I walked out. I did not cry in the cab home. I was past crying. What I felt instead was something colder and cleaner, a kind of clarity that I had never quite managed before. Something had finally broken open, and instead of feeling broken, I felt strangely light, like I had been carrying something for 31 years and had just set it down on the sidewalk and kept walking. My phone buzzed at 11 that night. My mother. I let it ring. It buzzed again. My brother. I put the phone in my nightstand drawer. I made tea. I sat by the window of my apartment and watched the city lights and thought about the 6 years I had spent becoming someone worth celebrating. I thought about every family dinner where my brother's latest scheme was the main topic and my promotions were acknowledged with a nod before the conversation moved on. I thought about my college graduation, where my father spent the reception on the phone dealing with something my brother had gotten into. I thought about Christmas and Thanksgiving And the way my mother's voice changed registers when she talked about him versus when she talked about me. Warmer, softer, more present. I wasn't angry, not exactly. I was done. The next morning, my brother called at 8 o'clock sharp, which told me he'd been coached. I answered on the fourth ring. His voice came through easy and familiar, the tone he used when he needed something. Clara, hey. So, last night got a little crazy. We ended up doing this thing for the business launch and it kind of ran long. You know how it is. I said. Did you know about my dinner reservation when you planned yours? Silence. A beat too long. It was kind of last minute, he said. My invitation went out 3 weeks ago, I said. Your event was last minute or your decision to let everyone go to yours instead of mine was last minute? He shifted to a different gear, smoother. Look, I didn't think you'd be that upset about it. It's just a dinner. You know Mom and Dad. They wanted to support the business launch, and you let 14 people confirm my invitation, I said. And then you let 14 people no-show without a single message to me. That's not last minute. That's a choice. He didn't have an answer for that. He moved on quickly, which told me there was a reason for the call beyond the apology he hadn't actually given. Okay, look, he said. I actually wanted to talk to you about something. The launch is going well, really well, but there's a cash flow situation in the first quarter that my partner and I are trying to bridge. It's just a short-term thing, totally normal for a startup. We were thinking, since you're in finance, you'd understand how this stuff works, and you've obviously been doing really well lately. I almost admired how smoothly he pivoted. You want money, I said. It's not like that. It's more of an investment. How much? He said a number. I won't repeat it here, but it was significant. Months of my salary. He said it the way you say a number when you've already decided the other person will say yes. I told him I'd think about it. That was a lie. But I needed time to understand the full shape of what was happening. I hung up and sat with it. They had skipped my dinner not out of thoughtlessness, but out of calculation. My brother had needed a crowd for his launch. My family had decided, without discussion, without a single message to me, that his needs outweighed my milestone. And now he was calling to convert that decision into a financial transaction. As if the two things were unrelated. As if I hadn't sat alone at a table for 14 in a press dining room while they celebrated him 40 minutes across town. My friend Dana called me that afternoon. She was the only person I had told about the dinner in the first place, the only one I'd been genuinely excited with. When I told her what happened, she was quiet for a moment, and then she said, Clara, you know this isn't about the dinner, right? This has been the whole pattern your entire life, and they just showed you in the clearest possible way that it hasn't changed. The question is what you're going to do with that information. Dana had known me since college. She said what I already knew but needed to hear out loud. That evening, my mother called again. I answered this time. She skipped the greeting. Clara, your brother told me he spoke with you. I hope you're thinking seriously about this. The business is genuinely at a critical stage, and he needs people in his corner. He has a corner full of people, I said. I saw the photos. She made a sound that was almost a laugh. That was a celebration. This is serious. These are different things. I'm aware, I said. I also had a celebration last night that was serious to me, but apparently these things aren't always treated equally. We've already talked about that, she said, in the tone that meant the subject was being closed rather than resolved. This is about your brother's future. You have a good salary, a stable job. You're not supporting anyone. You're in the best position in this family to help, and this is what family does. There it was. The same logic applied to me every time. You're stable. You're single. You don't have dependents. As if my stability was a resource the family was entitled to draw from, as if I had built my life carefully and responsibly so that they could spend it. I worked for 6 years for this stability. I said quietly. I sacrificed weekends and vacations, and I missed things because I was building something. Nobody helped me. Nobody invested in me. I did it on my own. That's what you do when you're capable, she said. And you are capable. That's not an insult. It's not a compliment either, I said, when capable just means available. She was quiet. I said, I'm not giving him the money, Mom. Her voice cooled immediately. Clara, If this business fails because you refuse to help, that is going to sit with this family for a very long time." "Okay," I said. She hung up. My father called an hour later. He had always been the one they sent in when my mother's approach wasn't working. He came in practical and reasonable, the good cop who made the same argument sound like logic instead of guilt. "Clara, let's talk about this like adults," he said. "Your brother made a mistake last night with the scheduling. I'll be the first to admit that. But that's separate from the business situation, and you're letting emotion drive a financial decision, which you know better than to do." "I'm not emotional," I said. "I'm clear. There's a difference." "Sweetheart, Dad. Did you know about my reservation before you all went to his launch?" A pause. "Careful. Your mother mentioned something, yes. And you went anyway. It's complicated. He needed us there. The investors were there. It was a whole. Did anyone pick up the phone to call me? Did anyone send one message to say we're sorry, we can't make it tonight?" He didn't answer that. "That's the part I can't move past," I said. "Not that you went, that not one person out of 14 thought I was worth a single message." He tried a different angle. "You've always been the strong one. We depend on you because you've always come through. That's not us dismissing you. That's us trusting you." I had heard this framing my whole life, dressed in different clothes. Being depended upon presented as an honor, being overlooked rebranded as trust. My self-sufficiency used as permission to stop showing up for me. "I'm going to say this once," I said. "I love you both. But I am not a backup plan. I am not a reserve fund, and I'm not available to be called on only when something is needed from me. If that's the relationship you want with me, you're going to find that I'm much less available than you thought." I hung up before he could respond. The calls from extended family started 2 days later. An aunt I spoke to maybe twice a year texted me, "Hope you're doing okay. Heard there's some tension. He's really trying, you know." A cousin left a voicemail, genuinely confused, asking if everything was all right. And one message from a family friend I had known since childhood, who I suspected had been directly deployed by my mother, suggesting I think about the big picture and not let pride get in the way of family. Pride. That word again. I had noticed that in my family, any form of self-respect I expressed was reframed as pride. Wanting to be acknowledged was pride. Setting a limit was pride. Saying no was pride. But my brother spending money he didn't have on a business launch while 14 people broke a commitment to me, that was just ambition, just family support, just the way things are. I went to work, I did my job. In the evenings, I cooked in my apartment, went running, had dinner with Dana, read. My life, the one I had built carefully and on my own, continued. The buzzing of my phone on the counter became background noise, a problem that existed outside the walls of the life I had made. But I was thinking. I had taken a photo the day I signed the lease on my apartment. 3 years ago, sitting at the desk in the apartment I now owned outright through my savings, the original lease and the key in my hands. I had taken the photo as a private marker, a moment just for me. I had never posted it. I opened my phone and found it. Me at 28, sitting at my kitchen table, holding the key and the paperwork, grinning at the camera I'd propped against a mug. In the background, you could see the window and the light coming in. I thought about what I wanted to say. I didn't want to be dramatic. I didn't want to perform. I wanted to say something true, something that anyone who had ever built a life quietly and been overlooked for it would recognize the moment they read it. I typed. 3 years ago, I signed the lease on this apartment by myself. No co-signer, no help, no one cheering in the corner. Just me and the savings account I'd been building since my first paycheck. Last weekend, I got promoted to senior financial analyst. I invited my family to celebrate. They had other plans. Funny how the people who don't show up are always the first to call when they need something. Showing up for myself from here on out. I posted it on a Friday night. Then I put my phone down and made dinner and watched a movie. By morning I had over 400 likes. Former colleagues, college friends, people I had lost touch with, all chiming in. The comments were full of people who recognized the feeling, people who wrote me paragraphs, people who said me too, and thank you for saying this. Dana sent me a voice memo that was mostly her cheering. And then my sister called. She was not the gentle approach. She was the one they sent when they wanted me to feel ashamed. Do you understand what you've done? she said before I could speak. Mom is hysterical. People from church are messaging her. Dad's work colleagues saw it. You have aired our family business to your entire internet following for what? Likes. Because you're upset about a dinner? I posted a photo of myself and wrote about my own experience, I said. I didn't name anyone. You didn't have to name anyone, she said, voice rising. Everyone knows. Do you think people are stupid? Take it down. No, Clara. I remember very clearly posting things about my brother that made him look good, I said. I remember sharing his fundraisers and his launch announcements and his recovery and his new beginnings multiple times. Did anyone tell me to take those down? She didn't answer. I don't think the problem is the post, I said. I think the problem is that for the first time the story being told is mine. She hung up. My brother texted 20 minutes later, 2 sentences. This was a really selfish thing to do. I hope you're happy. I read it twice. I thought about every event of his I had promoted, every loan I hadn't given but had been pressured about, every dinner where his news was the headline. I thought about the empty table at Meridian and the balloon banner and the neon lights and my sister's caption. Family always shows up. I didn't reply. My mother's text came that evening, long and careful in a way that told me she had written and rewritten it. It started with I love you and ended with please call me. And in the middle was a paragraph that contained the phrase you're making it very hard for this family to function. As if I were a gear that had slipped out of place in a machine. As if my value to the family was measured by how smoothly I kept things running for everyone else. I read it. I didn't respond. I took a bath. I went to bed early. The following week at work, my manager stopped by my desk and said she had seen my post and that she hoped I knew how much my work was valued here. It was a small moment, but it sat with me all day in a warm way. Dana and I had dinner that Thursday. We went to a nice Italian place near her apartment and ordered too much pasta and split a bottle of red wine. And she made me tell her the whole story, from beginning to end, even though she already knew most of it, because she said she wanted to hear me say it out loud in order. When I finished, she said, "Does it feel different now? Saying it all like that?" I thought about it. "Yeah," I said. "It feels like mine." That was the thing I kept coming back to. The story of what had happened to me had always been filtered through what my family needed it to mean. In their version, I was sensitive. I was proud. I was making a big deal out of nothing. I was destabilizing the family over a dinner. In my version, I was a woman who had worked for 6 years to build a life, who had extended a genuine invitation and been genuinely abandoned, who had been asked the very next day to fund a brother who had just publicly celebrated without her. Posting that photo had not been revenge, not in the way people think of revenge. It had been an act of narration. I had simply chosen to tell the story from where I was standing instead of where they wanted me to stand. 6 weeks passed. The calls slowed. My brother's business partner apparently stepped in with a bridge investment, so the financial urgency resolved itself without me. I heard through a cousin that my parents had told people the situation had been blown out of proportion, which was the version of accountability they were capable of. My sister unfollowed me on social media, which I noticed and then forgot about within the same hour. And then, Thanksgiving arrived. In previous years, I had driven to my parents' house with a dish I had spent 2 days making, sat at the table where my brother's life was the main conversation, smiled when relatives asked me what I had been up to, and then waited while their attention drifted back to the center of the room. I had done this every year for as long as I could remember. Because that was what you did. You showed up even when showing up felt like erasing yourself. This year, I didn't go. I told Dana about the decision in October, and she immediately invited me to her family's dinner. Her family was loud and warm in the way that my family had never quite managed, the kind of loud that made space for everyone. Her mother called me sweetheart and asked genuinely about my job. Her brothers ribbed each other and included me in the ribbing. The food was incredible. The table was full of people who had chosen to be there. After dinner, while Dana's family moved to the living room, I stepped onto the back porch for some air. The night was cold and clear. I could see a few stars through the suburban light wash. I had my phone in my hand out of habit, and I saw there was a voicemail from my mother. Left at 2 in the afternoon when they would have just sat down to eat. I played it. Her voice was different from the calls of the past weeks. Not strategic, not managed. Just tired. Clara. I know you're not here. I think I knew you weren't coming. I want to say something and I don't know if I'll say it right. But I've been thinking since everything happened that maybe I've been expecting you to be fine with being second for too long, and I called it strength, but maybe I was just comfortable. I don't know. I hope you're with people who are good to you. I love you. I stood on the porch in the cold for a while after that. I didn't cry. I wasn't sure what I felt exactly. It wasn't satisfaction. Not quite. It wasn't forgiveness either. It was something more like recognition. A long, slow acknowledgement of how much time had passed in a particular way, and that time was not going to come back, and that the only direction available was forward. I thought about what forward looked like. Not without them, necessarily. But not arranged around them either. Not shaping my expectations to fit what they had always been capable of giving. Not arriving at their table already smaller, already prepared to be overlooked, already ready to drive home and tell myself it was fine. Forward looked like the apartment I had signed for at 28. It looked like the office where my name was now on a senior title. It looked like Dana's mother calling me sweetheart without even knowing she was filling a space I had been hungry for. It looked like posting one honest photo and discovering that more people recognized themselves in it than I had imagined. I went back inside. Dana handed me a glass of wine. Her little niece climbed onto the couch next to me and asked me to read her something from a picture book she was carrying, and I did, doing all the voices, making her laugh. Dana watched from across the room with a look on her face that I pretended not to see because it would have made me cry. I texted my mother that night. I kept it short. I heard your message. Thank you for saying it. I'm doing well. I hope dinner was good. She replied within a minute. It wasn't the same without you. I read that and felt the weight of it, the truth of it, and also the long years of it having been true without anyone saying so. I set the phone down and sat in the warmth of Dana's house and let myself simply be somewhere I was wanted. The thing about building a life on your own is that you learn, eventually, that you are both the builder and the building. Every decision I made for 6 years, every early morning, every boundary I held at work, every dollar I saved, had not just been about the apartment or the promotion. It had been about becoming someone who could walk out of Meridian on an empty Saturday night and not dissolve. Someone who could let a voicemail go unanswered without guilt consuming her. Someone who could sit at a stranger's Thanksgiving table and feel at home because she had finally stopped measuring home by who had always failed to provide it. My family had taught me that my worth was conditional, that I was reliable but not remarkable, useful but not central, the one you could skip because she'd be fine. They had repeated this lesson so many times that for a while I believed them. I set my expectations accordingly. I made myself easier to overlook. But something in me had kept building anyway. Quietly, without applause, without a banner or a crowd or 14 confirmed guests. I had kept showing up for myself when no one else was going to. That Thanksgiving night, driving home from Dana's with the heater on and a container of leftovers on the passenger seat, I passed through the neighborhood where I had grown up. The old streets, the houses with their lit windows. I didn't slow down or feel nostalgic. I just let it pass. The way you let something pass when it belongs to who you used to be rather than who you are now. My apartment was dark when I got in. I turned on one lamp. I unpacked the leftovers into my refrigerator. I changed into comfortable clothes and made tea and sat on my couch in the quiet. My phone stayed on the kitchen counter. I thought about the private dining room at Meridian, the empty chairs, the cold bread. I thought about the clarity I had felt walking out, the strange lightness of it. At the time I hadn't understood it fully. Now I did. That lightness had been the moment I stopped waiting for them to be different. Stopped arranging my milestones around their availability. Stopped auditing my expectations to fit what they had always been willing to give. The table at Meridian had been empty. But I had never been more clear about what I deserved to have at one. I didn't need them to change, or apologize, or suddenly see me clearly after 31 years of choosing not to. I didn't need their shame or their regret, or their calls that came too late. I had needed, for a very long time, to stop needing those things. And somewhere between a cold dinner table and a Thanksgiving porch and one honest photograph posted on a Friday night, I had finally gotten there. I sipped my tea and listened to the city outside my window. Someone on the floor above me was playing music softly. The lamp made a warm circle on the wall. I was not forgotten. I had never been forgettable. They had simply looked in the wrong direction for so long that they had convinced themselves the light wasn't there. But the light had been there the entire time. I had built it myself, lamp by lamp, year by year, in a home that had only my name on the door. And for the first time in my life, that was more than enough.